Total Sports Zone. All sports, all action, one zone.
Entering the 2026 season, the Florida Panthers sought the first Stanley Cup three-peat in 40 years. But behind the scenes, that foundation was already fractured. Entering the year, they occupied a rare space in the sports landscape, carrying an aura of inevitability similar to the Los Angeles Dodgers. The team had already accounted for the loss of Matthew Tkachuk for the first half of the season, as he recovered from surgery. With 82 games of runway ahead, the front office began the year with their existing roster plan unchanged. This plan relied on a belief in their established championship identity, the idea that their veteran core could weather any early season turbulence while waiting for their stars to heal. But by April 2026, the reality was different. The Panthers didn't just fail to win a third cup, they didn't even make the playoffs. The central question is how a team with 2 consecutive titles, one viewed as having an excellent chance at a third, collapsed into total elimination in just 6 months. The collapse began at training camp with an injury that was simply not part of the team's calculated recovery timelines. Alexander Barkov, the team's best player, suffered a torn ACL and MCL before the season started. Barkov's value is literal. He is the league's premier defensive forward and their primary offensive engine. Losing him meant removing the player who touched every facet of their game. Initially, the goal was survival. The team hoped to remain within striking distance of a playoff seed until Barkov could hypothetically return for the postseason. That strategy is theoretically sound, but it assumes the rest of the roster remains physically intact. To survive losing a superstar, the depth players must step into larger roles and sustain production over a long winter. Instead, the injuries piled up. Florida lost critical role players, Anton Lundell and Evan Rodriguez, the very individuals Coach Paul Maurice relied on in high-leverage moments. The list grew to include net front specialist Sam Reinhart and key defensemen Nico Mikola and Uvis Balinskis. The attrition finally reached a breaking point with the loss of Brad Marchand, the veteran forward who had become a central component of their championship identity. Marchand had been carrying the offense, producing 54 points in just 52 games before a lower body injury ended his season in the second half. With Marchand out, the team officially lost the specific physical edge they had used to dominate previous playoff runs. This diagram tracks the team's total roster capacity, their projected production, against the calendar. As the injuries stack up, the team is physically stripped of the personnel required to win the games they needed. When the skaters are decimated by injury, a championship team has one final failsafe: the elite goaltending that can steal games they have absolutely no business winning. That massive responsibility fell to Sergei Bobrovsky, the veteran goaltender whose performance was the backbone of the previous 2 titles. But this year, the failsafe failed. Bobrovsky struggled to a 27-23-1 record, unable to keep the team afloat as the injuries mounted. This graph shows the statistical decline. Bobrovsky's goals against average, the number of goals he allowed per game, spiked to a bloated 3.07 this season. At the same time, this second plunging line represents his save percentage, which dropped to .877. With no healthy offensive stars and a primary goaltender whose numbers had bottomed out, the structural collapse of the team was total. Because the team couldn't win enough games to stay in the race, their regular season runway ran out, making any hope of a playoff return for Barkov irrelevant. Now, general manager Bill Zito and head coach Paul Maurice face an offseason defined by difficult questions rather than a championship parade. They must address the $10 million dilemma regarding Bobrovsky, deciding if a 37-year-old with declining stats can still lead a franchise. The alternative is Daniil Tarasov, who at 26 has potential, but has never been tested in the high-stakes environment of a championship chase. Ultimately, the 2026 Panthers proved that even the most talented rosters cannot outskate math and anatomy. A dynasty doesn't always end in a dramatic Game 7. Sometimes it simply bleeds out on the trainer's table.